external examination and rest of the things. So I hope I can start with the session. It's already 3 o'clock. So I welcome back to you once again. And I prefer sharing the PPT with you all. I hope it is visible. And when you look at this PPT, you will realize, yeah, thank you. So when you see the PPT, you can observe that in women's writing, BA third year, semester 5, already first block has been covered on Saturday, that is day before yesterday, on 7th. Today is 9th, that means 7th I have covered up with unit 1 concepts. And yesterday I covered up with block 1 concepts I covered up on day 1, that is on 7th. And yesterday I covered with the block 2 concepts. So when it comes to block 2, I would like to give you a small reminder of what we have gone through. If you see here, you can see actually block 2 dealt with these particular concepts such as male-centric language and feminist critique from Unit 4. Then Unit 5, breaking the stereotypes, women's writing and the canon, we have covered in Unit 5. And then Unit 6 dealt with the other worlds, which is about women's traveling. So these 3 units we have already covered up in Block 2. And now probably we have to go to Block 3. There are 4 different units, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I'm going to explain you extensively of all these units so that you'll be able to deal with the exams and understanding, before exams, understanding of these concepts and be able to do some research-oriented knowledge you can gain and be able to do the necessary academic chores out of this. So just give me a minute of time. I'm going to deal with the concepts and be able to give you knowledge on this. So let me take you through the next block. So here we go with block 3. I hope it is visible to everyone. I hope it is visible to everyone. You can read the block 3. The concepts are going to be like this. So the concepts are going to be introduction to critical categories. That means with a critical view, what are the categories that exist in women's writing? We see under Unit 7. And under Unit 8, we see introduction to caste, race, and ethnicity with reference to feminist theories. And we see in Unit 9, the introduction to feminist geography, the locations we are going to look at. And then with Unit 10, we see the introduction to gender and sexuality, that is Unit 10. So 4 different units in Block 3 we are going to cover to understand the concept. So coming to the first ever concept, that is Unit 7, Introduction to Critical Categories. When we deal with it, we see that a few concepts are existing in it. Basically, these categories are used to classify the knowledge and ideas. Still, we have to understand that they're not fixed. You cannot fix up anything in a particular way because things change over time. There is an evolution process takes place in everything. So categories that we are going to look at also might change eventually. So what am I talking about? So critically, this particular concept of categories involves questioning established knowledge and forming meaning through analysis and evaluation. That means how feminist writers question various things and then how they have evaluated various things under categories. And categories are divisions that organize ideas, knowledge, and they're not fixed but constantly evolving, which I've already talked about. And then we see that social constructionist theory, talking about it, by referring to the idea of categories being historically and culturally situated and shaped by power relationships. So how categories change, how categories evolve historically, and how they are culturally situated, how they are shaping, how each category is being shaped by power relationships, be it the category of canons, be it category of anything for that matter. So we see how male and female positions keep changing, how they turn into power relationships, how they historically, culturally situate, how they shape. So this thing, the social constructionist theory, social constructionist theory that comes up with an argument about. So we also see that postmodernism challenging grand narratives, which are universally embracing fragmented narratives and multiple perspectives related to feminism, feminist ideologies. So we see that work writers and their works are as following. Jane Austen writes Pride and Prejudice in 1813. She gets that published, which explores gender normativity and class hierarchy through the character of Elizabeth Bennet, which challenges societal expectation. So it turns out to be a critical category by challenging the societal expectation, which is one of its own kind of books that comes up with gender normativity and class hierarchy. So we see this critical category over here. And then you see Namita Gokhale talks about Paro, Dreams of Passion, which more or less, reflects the kind of the ideology of Pride and Prejudice essence. So 1984, it got published, and it's a postmodern novel that blurs boundaries of marriage, class, societal expectation, and questions traditional structure. So this is somehow, you see the classifying knowledge and ideas which do not fix up. So earlier, at one point of time, marriage and so class and societal expectations used to be fixated for women. As eventually they change, so category also is being changed with a critical purview. Therefore, you see how Jane Austen or Namita Gokhale coming up with these kind of works, completely changing the category from one perspective to another perspective. That is where the introduction to critical categories come into picture. We also see what other things have to be understood for this matter. Difference in feminist scholarship. So here in critical category, the key concepts go this way. Feminist scholarship examines how social construction of gender, race, class, and caste creating differences in women experience. So these are the categories we are talking about: gender, caste, race, and gender, race, class, and caste, creating women, differences in women experiences. So what do you mean by category here? Like higher class, one particular status of women, or women of one particular status in the society. For instance, white women, black women, their experiences are different. Again, in that, again, gender, race, class, and caste of this white women, black women, or Indian women, or for that matter, Asian women, all changing. So you're dividing them into multiple categories and trying to look at their problems from an intricate purview. So that's what this feminist scholarship is dealing with when it comes to critical categories. So we also see essentialism, assuming that individuals have innate characteristics based on their gender, race, or class, which is challenged by feminist theory. So you cannot categorize anything in one particular way. They keep changing, they keep evolving. Right. Julia Kristeva and Luz Erigari emphasizes on the importance of language and representation in establishing difference of these all women, how they are different from each other. Though we see many similarities, or one particular similarity of these people being one women altogether, yet how they are different, how their language changes, how their women race, class, and ethnicity and caste, bringing the difference in even in language, no, in establishing the difference among them. So this is what Julia Kristeva talks about. And Feud and Lacan's psychoanalytic theories explore the mental recognition of gender and their cultural production of gender roles. So this is another set of another thought, right? How psychoanalytic theories explore the mental recognition of gender and the cultural production of gender roles. So here we see these things being the key concepts when it comes to dealing with feminist scholarship under critical categories. And we see writers and their works. Luz Erigari talks about, and comes up with a work, I Love to You, right? In 1990, it got published. And this book argues that women must occupy the subject position in language also to achieve sexual difference. What is subject position? Now, most of the time, men take the first person position, women are being considered as a third person position, where one becomes subject and the other becomes object. So here, we can swap this position, she says, where women take the primary subject position and keeping men into object position in language, and to achieve that, to achieve not sexual difference but sexual superiority for women. And you see, an ethics of sexual difference is another book of her. In 1982 she produced it, which critiques the feuds theories and emphasizes on cultural differences over biological ones. Michelle also talks about certain similar things in her book Psychoanalysis and Feminism, which got published in 1974. She critiques Freud's patriarchal perspectives on women's bodies and argues that women internalize masculine culture. So she says that women also has masculine culture in them, but patriarchal perspectives on women bodies also have got some sort of influence. Therefore, women do not wish to show that masculine culture in their bodies. They hide it, and they adopt the feminist body language or bodily characteristics. So this is nothing but Freud's patriarchal perspective. Some Freud's, we are talking about, Sigmund Freud here. So we see that patriarchal perspective on women bodies, how it, this patriarchal perspective brings the impact and makes women internalize their cultural, masculine culture. Simone de Beauvoir says that in her second sex, which is publication of 1949, she explores how sexual difference creates inequality, and she argues that one is not born but becomes a woman. So here we see that these feminist, theorists are telling us that women are not born, women are made by the society. So you have masculine features as a woman, you have the capabilities as men, but you are made as women, and you are framed to be women, behave as women, and produce your ideas, thoughts, and emotions, and all the behavior. Anything that you portray on the surface level should be very feminist, just because you are made as women by the society, they say. So let's move on to the next part, intersectionality. So the key concepts here, Kimberly Crenshaw comes up with, is actually, this is coined by her, Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989, who examines how multiple systems of oppression, that is race, gender, class, etc., intersect to marginalize individuals. Right. So black feminists like Audre Lorde and Bell Hooks, and also somebody like Kumbahi River collective she highlights these people highlight the unique oppressions faced by black women. And the third wave feminist movement also emphasized on inclusivity and diversity, challenging the universalizing tendencies of second wave feminism. Right. So writers and their work here in third wave feminism, we see Kimberly Crenshaw coining the term intersectionality, and on Audre Lorde, coming up with her work Sister Outsider in 1984, which is a collection of essays exploring race, gender, and sexuality. And Kombahi River Collective, she coming up with a Black feminist statement in 1977, a work that is a foundational text in Black feminist thought, emphasizing on intersection of race, gender, and class. These are a few concepts of intersectionality, which is giving us a sense that it's not only being women, not only it is about gender, but intersectionality deals with race, class, and different types of oppression a woman faces in her particular place, be it a white woman or a black woman or an Asian woman, or for that matter, any woman she is. What are the different types of downtrodden or the oppressions that she faces, the challenges that she faces, and how they intersectionally, multiples her suffering, is what intersectionality talks about. So multidimensional subfields of feminism, when you look at, so we see here feminist scholarship spanning to multiple disciplines, including literature, sociology, economics, And this scholarship issue, addressing issues like gender roles, reproductive rights, and labor. Dalit feminism also includes into this multidimensional subfields of feminism. So in India, Dalit feminism highlights the intersection of caste and gender as seen in the works of Bama and Ruth Manorama. So we see Monica Ali also coming up with a work, Brick Lane in 2001, which explores the lives of migrant women and the intersections of gender, class, and nationality. Right? And writers in their works, if we particularly look at, Bama comes up with Karukku in 1992, which got published in 1992. It is the first Dalit autobiographical work exploring the life of a Dalit Christian woman facing caste and gender oppression. And Monica Ali comes up with Brick Lane, which we discussed a while ago. It got published in 2001. It is a novel about a Bangladeshi immigrant woman in London who explores the themes of gender, class, and migration. And Ruth Manorama, who is a Dalit activist, highlights the triple oppression faced by Dalit women due to caste, gender, and poverty. Right. So look at the differences in the feminist literature. So here the key concepts are like post-colonial feminism critiques, Eurocentric feminist narratives that are universalizing women's experiencing, ignoring differences of race, class, and geography. So because of this reason, post-colonial writers like Chandra Talpade Monte, Gayatri Spivak Chakravarti, they challenge the representation of third world women in Western feminist discourse. Western feminist discourse only talk about feminist related issues, but these people talk about the third world women issues where double triple jeopardy is happening in the case of these third world women. Yesterday we discussed what is third world women. So works by Chiwa Achebe, then works by Jihwa Achebe, or you talk about Nyugiwa Thiongo, or you talk about Arundhati Rai. These all explore the psychological and cultural impacts of colonialism, right? So these are the key concepts we are discussing when it comes to the difference in feminist literature, especially. We also talk about writers and their works like Chandra Talpade Mohanty coming up with Under Western Eyes, which is a feminist scholarship and colonial discourses published in 1986. So this work critiques Western feminist representation of third world women. Gayatri Spivak Chakravarti came up with a work, Can the Subaltern Speak? Published in 1983. This explores the marginalization of subaltern women in post-colonial context. Then you see Chiwa Achebe coming up with Things Fall Apart in 1958, a novel that critiques colonialism and its impact on African societies. And you have Arundhati Roy, The God of Small Things, the book published in 1997, a novel that explores caste, gender, and post-colonial identity in India. So these are different feminist literature, various types of feminist literature coming up with, touching every corner, not leaving any stone unturned when it comes to feminist literature or feminist problems of women, I can say. So feminist movements in India, the key concepts when you look at it is about the self-employed women as well. It is actually, this particular feminist movements when we talk about, we have to talk about the self-employed women's association, SEBA, which was founded in 1972 that empowers poor and self-employed women in India. The Shah Bano case of 1985 and the Sati Prevention Act 1987 are landmark moments in the Indian women's right movement when we have to discuss feminist movements in India. The Gulabi gang, and which was founded by Sampath Devi Pal, is a vigilant group that fights against domestic violence and child marriage. This is one of the most important feminist movements in India. So key events when we look at, once again, Shabano's case, landmark case, secured Muslim women's rights to maintenance after a divorce. And Sati Prevention Act legislation that bans the practice of sati, widow immolation in India. And then Gulabi Gang, when you look at a women's vigilant group in India that fights for women rights and against gender-based violence. So this is about a few important feminist movements we have to look at from a bird's eye view here. And post-colonial feminism and language, when we look at it, examines how language and discourses are used to represent and marginalize women in colonized societies, right? Dino's brand, No Language is Neutral, which got published in 1990, explores the hybridity of language in post-colonial contexts, right? Combining standard English with Caribbean dialects. And then you see Homi Bhabha's concept of post-colonial ambivalence that describes the dynamic relationship between the colonizer and the colonized. Okay, so these are also essential for us to see like how feminism and language is interconnected and brings out the shades of feminism and make people realize the problems of women, right? So we appreciate that Brand or Homi Baba choosing such kind of works. I mean, choosing to touch these concepts in their works to talk about the dynamic relationship between colonizer and colonized, also coming up with the idea of a post-colonial feminism as an intricate or our internally described theory. Now, writers and works, again, when we look at No Language is Neutral and the Location of Culture are the two texts we can look at, which critically, view the post-colonial theory, exploring concepts like hybridity, ambivalence, so on and so forth. So let's move on to the conclusion of this particular unit, that is Unit 7, where the key concepts are like this: feminist scholarship that has evolved to include diverse voices and perspectives that challenge universalizing narratives. So intersectionality has become a crucial framework for understanding the multiple oppressions faced by marginal women. Then we see post-colonial feminism continuing to critique and deconstruct the legacies of colonialism in literature and the society. So here we go with the conclusion this way. So before we move on to the next unit, let's have an idea of what are all the things that we have learned so far. So we see that we have seen introduction to critical categories under which we understand race, caste, um, uh, and gender and other elements coming into the categories, where feminist writers like Jane Austen, Namta Gokhale, or for that matter, Lewis Irigaray, and then Juliette Michel, Simone de Beauvoir. So these people, coming up with critical theories and categorizing the feminist issues. And we also understand individually what exactly is the definition of intersectionality. And then we looked at the multidimensional subfields of feminism, such as not only, the various other types of feminism, like socialist feminism or radical feminism or other. We also see Dalit feminism taking a higher position in India because it deals with caste, gender, as well as different things, where Bhama, Ruth, Manorama being a few, renowned names in this case, including Monica Ali. And we also saw, what are the different feminist literatures that we see. People coming up with post-colonial feminism that critiques Eurocentric feminism, because Eurocentric narratives focus on only women's experiences, where while they ignore the race, class, and gender, other geography of, you know, geopardy of women. So we see here that writers like Chandra Talpadi Monti, Gayatri Spivak Chakravarti, Chihu Achebe, Arundhati Roy, these are the people taking up major positions to defend the other, people, especially women and their problems, who come from third world countries. We also see that feminist movements in India. So a couple of moments we observed here, like, secular Muslim women rights, maintenance after divorce was one of the discussions through Shabanu's case, which is one of the more important moments. Sati Prevention Act also can be considered as one of the moments, and we see Gulabi gang taking over the issue of women rights against gender-based violence. So these are a few things we discussed in this particular unit, along with post-colonial feminism and its language, where we see how post-colonial ambivalence and hybridity was brought into discussion. So this is about Unit 7. Now we are moving on to Unit 8, which introduction or provides the introduction to caste, race, ethnicity in feminist-related matters. So we see the key concepts here that we're going to go through are these. Just to give me a minute, I'm going to take you through this. Yeah, we see here that caste, race, and ethnicity being the landmarks of identity to use discrimination against marginalized women. When we talk about marginalized women, the people who do not have voices to talk, who are not allowed to, not given adequate opportunity or rights or, to represent themselves, these are marginalized groups. So, how this caste and race and ethnicity being the markers of identity to use in order to discriminate against these people. So here, caste is a hierarchical system that is based on birth, while race is often tied to skin color, and ethnicity being so the element that shared cultural practices. Right. So social inequality arises from unequal access to resources and afterwards based on caste, race, and ethnicity. So ethnicity refers to shared cultural traits like language, religion, and ancestry, which often impacted by colonization and ensures indigenous cultures. Right. So ethnicity, when you look at somebody is, you go to America, you speak the same language that another person speaks. So you are ethnically get connected, or your religion, somebody else's religion is same, you are ethnically connected, or your ancestry, their ancestry is connected, ethnically connected. So it is often impacted by colonization and ensure that indigenous cultures. So you become indigenous when you see you are able to connect to somebody else in a particular aspect, therefore your ethnicity matches up. So here the focus in this unit, that is Unit 8, is the Unit 8 explores the intersections of caste, race, and ethnicity with gender, particularly the oppression faced by women in these marginalized groups. So you talk about race, caste, and ethnicity in a general context, but because we are dealing with women writing, whatever you're going to go through, it is referring to women's problems, or the oppressions faced by women in marginalized group, especially who are affected by caste, race, and ethnicity as one of the reasons of their oppression. Now let's move on to try to understand exactly what are we talking about when we are talking about difference between caste, race, and ethnicity first. So caste, it is a rigid hierarchical system, especially in one of the communities in India we see, that is in Hindu community. So when you are talking about caste, it is a rigid hierarchical system. So Dalits or untouchables face severe discrimination and exploitation in this under this particular aspect of uh, life. So Dalit women experience dual oppression. That means they get the oppression from upper caste and from within their own communities, because they belong to an inferior gender according to the uh, people, according to the society or their family or their immediate family or their surroundings, their peer groups. Usually it is so unfortunate, people think women are second citizens, therefore they have this Dalit women face oppression not only by the upper caste, but also from their own communities because of this reason. So writers and works to refer to is Challapalli Swarupa Rani, who writes a poem Forbidden History, so where she voices the oppression of Dalit women, particularly the tradition of deciding girls to dedicating girls to prostitution. So You see, Devdasi system is something that you can talk about. Usually, it is said that Devdasi is a woman who is dedicated to God, but in the name of God, the other people who are from the powerful positions in the society, they try to take over her, and they consider themselves as representatives of God, and they try to force her to do prostitution. Right? This is a caste-based uh, oppression, we can say. So when we see race based, a social category historically forced through oppression and do the slavery and also do the and face the conquest. So racism enforces the superiority of one race over others, leading to a systematic discrimination. What does that mean? So look at the black and indigenous women. That means the people who are born there, or their skin color is black. So these people, women, face racial and gender-based oppression. Often being stereotyped as promiscuous or immoral. Right. So, writers and works, when you read to understand what exactly does this mean that Black and Indigenous women face racial and gender-based oppression, how are they stereotyped to promiscuous or immoral? Not that you can say a Black woman is always immoral or promiscuous. Or for that matter, Indigenous women are immoral. They are ready to accept any sort of advantages are being practiced by men, though that's not true. So talking about this, Toni Morrison comes up with a work, Beloved, in 1987, and also she writes The Bluest Eye, 1970, where she explores the intersection of race and gender in the lives of Black women. And you see ethnicity, it refers to shared cultural identity, which is usually impacted by colonization. So indigenous communities in countries like Canada, Australia, they have faced cultural erasures through residential schools and foster care system, right? So they are actually the people who were born in those communities. But when other countries come and they try to stay there, they almost uh, remove the indigenous culture and communities from there. They try to erase, and through the school and foster care system. It is also systematic erasing of the indigenous cultures, indigenous communities, isn't that? So this is something is written by Ruby Langford Guinea in the work of Don't Take Your Love to Town, which is written in 1988, published in 1988. It is an autobiography highlighting the struggles of Aboriginal women in Australia. We see Chiwa Achebei's work also giving us the same sense, things fall apart, giving us the same sense as to how Igbo community is completely damaged, and destroyed by whites who eventually, introduced them the Christianity and taking away their thoughts to follow their own culture and change entire and introducing them to a complete destruction of their own community. The protagonist gives us a sense of what they were and how they turned out to be due to this kind of erosion of their ethnicity. Right. So we move on to understand about movements for social change. So what are the different movements that are actually have become a part of understanding this racial oppression or ethnical oppressions, various movements we look at. So Black Panther movement is one of those movements which is about civil rights. So it's a civil right movement in the US. 1966 to 1982, this movement went on. It is fighting against racial oppression. So women like Angela Davis and Elaine Brown, and then you see various other people playing significant roles, but they faced marginalization within the movement because they were women. Right. So look at the key figures of this moment, especially Angela Davis. She's a civil activist, and she's a scholar. She's known for her work on gender, race, and class. And Elaine Brown also, she's the only female chairman or chairperson of the Black Panther Party. Okay, these are a few key figures during Black Panther moment and referring to feminist, uh, uh, feminist practices, or you can say feminist theorists movements. And then we see Dalit Panther movement, which is inspired by the Black Panther movement founded in India in the 1970s to fight the caste oppression. So it focuses on literature and activism, but often neglected by this specific struggles of Dalit women, which we see here in India. The key figures are Numedo Dasal, Raja Dable, J.V. Pawar, who are the founders of Dalit Panther movement. So when simultaneously it went on here in India to the same moment with some key figures like that, like we see feminist movements here in different ways also. So mainstream feminism often overlook the experiences of Black, Dalit, and indigenous women. Therefore, Black feminism emerged in 1980s and 1990s, addressing both racism and sexism. What are the key figures? Who are the key figures? Bell Hooks, Ain't I a Woman? In 1981, she spoke about this. She critiques the exclusion of Black women from the mainstream feminism. Patricia Hill Collins comes up with a work, Black Feminist Thought, which got published in 1990. She explores the intersection of race, gender, and class. So these are a few movements of social change. Uh, and we see now here we have to look at what exactly triple oppression is. So the key concepts in triple oppression are these: women from marginalized communities facing triple oppression based on caste, race, gender, and class, and Dalit women being the face of violence. They have to take the violence and discrimination from upper caste and also their own communities and also the state. This is what triple oppression is. Three different ways they are taking the oppression. And Black and indigenous women face similar oppression, often being objectified and excluded from mainstream feminist movement. So these three things we have to consider as triple oppression. What are the major works when you look at? In India, Bama wrote Karukku in 1992. It is the first Dalit autobiography exploring the life of a Dalit Christian woman facing caste gender oppression, which we discussed a while ago. Maria Campbell, she wrote a Half Breed, getting it published in 1973, which is an autobiography of a Métis woman in Canada. So she highlights the struggles of a mixed race woman. She's not American, not Canadian. She's a mixed race person where she sees this half-breed people, getting the struggle of mixed race, other than getting oppressed as a woman. So we see Miracle, who writes "I Am Women" in 1998, a critique of colonialism, particularly it is from an indigenous feminist perspective. So triple oppression we see as our key concepts of the Unit 8. Now we are moving on to certain women contribution to the literary canon. Okay, key concepts are marginalized women writers using literature to reclaim their identities and challenging stereotypes. We also see autobiography being a key genre for those writers who allowing themselves to narrate their own lived experiences. And we see writers often using selective memory and collective storytelling to challenge mainstream narratives. So writers and works, when we look at Ruby Langford Guinevere, writes Don't Take Your Love to Town, which is 1988 work, an autobiography of an Aboriginal woman fighting against systematic racism and gender oppression. Shivakami in India wrote The Grip of Change in 2006, a Dalit feminist novel exploring caste and gender dynamics in Tamil Nadu. We also see Maya Angelou coming up with the idea of Still I Rise in 1978, a poem celebrating the resilience of marginalized women, right? So challenges faced by marginalized women writers, we have to really look at it. Um, Marginalized women writers face challenges in getting their works published and recognized. Writing is fine, but observation writing itself is difficult. After doing that, they're getting published and recognition. Uh, Waiting for recognition is another challenge they have. So mainstream audiences don't often they have rigid expressions about what indigenous or Dalit literature should look like. right? So this is one of the biggest challenges. So when things come out of the box, things come do not look like what they want, naturally people reject it. So mainstream audiences usually do not much uh, encourage this marginalized women writers works. So writers like Bama and Lee Miracle challenge these expectations by using unconventional narrative styles and focusing on community experiences. What are unconventional narrative styles? Than the regular narrative style, they choose different narrative styles in order to make the community focus on the experiences of these people. So Bama writes Sangati in 1994. It is a novel that uses a non-linear narrative to explore the lives of Dalit women in Tamil Nadu. Usually, even if we read Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things, we see flashback and then current time, and then go to flashback and then come to current time. So there is a time difference from throughout the novel that captures the mind of the reader. So same way, Bama also comes up with her Sangati with a different type of narrative, a non-linear narrative that helps people to focus on problems while capturing their minds onto the actual discussion. We also see, excuse me, Lee Miracle coming up with Robinson, which is published in 1993, a novel that deconstructs colonial stereotypes of indigenous people, which is similar experience, similar work to Sangati. I mean, similar thought of Sangati. We also see healing through literature is another key concept we have to go through. So, marginalized women writers use literature as a tool for healing and reclaiming their identities. Their works challenge colonial and upper caste narratives, offering alternative perspectives on indigenous Dalit lives. Writing becomes a form of resistance and a way to build collective consciousness with marginalized communities. We see writers and works referring to this idea of healing through literature. One is Maya Angelou, who writes Still I Rise in 1978, a poem that embodies the spirit of resistance and resilience among marginalized women. Ruby Langford Guinevere writes Don't Take Your Love to Town in 1988, which we talked about a while ago. It is an autobiography that highlights the strength and resilience of Aboriginal women. Similarly, Shivakami also writes The Grip of Change 2006, novel that critiques caste and gender oppression while offering a hope for social transformation. That is about healing through literature. The moment we finish with this part of discussion, we are moving on to Unit 9, which is an introduction to feminist geography. Okay, so we see when we are talking about geography, we are talking about spaces, we are talking about resources, we are talking about cultural interactions. So we are talking basically about location. Okay, so more than just geography, this includes cultural, social, and political interactions. What do you mean by human geography again? It studies human engagement with spaces, resources, and cultural interactions. So we look at feminist geography first, which questions gendered spaces and boundaries. So this examines women's voices in relation to their location and intersectional identities. If we look at this, the accounts with coming up with geography, spaces with resources and cultural interaction with reference to culture, social and political interactions, the first thing comes into our mind is Jamaica Kincaid's A Small Place, which is a post-colonial critique that talks about how people live in a particular space and their lives, their culture, the social interactions, so on and so forth. Similarly, we see when we talk about places, Virginia Woolf's Our Room of One's Own also talks about space of women's creativity, where she talks about how a woman doesn't like to go out but confines herself into one place, and she comes up with her creative originality. So when we are talking about spaces, especially location and geography, we also see standpoint of theory and literature. So here, Sandra Harding and Nancy Hartstock gives us an evidence of women's knowledge being the central to understanding power dynamics, right? So we see that key works reflecting standpoint theory, where bell hooks feminist theory from margin to center, the work published in 1984 talking about, oppression and oppression to empowerment. So from one place to another place, where they stood at the beginning, how they eventually stood to the peaks, so be able to stand on the peak of the empowerment. So the transition is discussed in this book. The transition is smoothly handled in this book written by Bell Hooks and her feminist theory from margin to center. We also see how Audre Lorde's Sisters Outsider, published in 1984, talking about identity. So this is talking about the identity as insider and identity as outsider. So insider-outsider identity is basically dealt with in this book of Audre Lorde. Then comes his Bell Hooks' another work, Oppositional Gaze, published in 1992, which is about a black female spectatorship, how they stand in one place and keep looking at things and how observant and vigilant they are, is what no, Oppositional Gaze talks about. In 1992, it got published. And we see Jane Austen's Persuasion, the power of knowledge and shifting perspectives is something that we really look at. So when we are looking at unit 9, when we are talking about introduction to feminist geography, we are not simply talking about only the location, but also various perspectives of different writers that talk about not just location and geography, but also talking about culture and standpoint and spectatorship and various other things. We also look at this feminist ideologies and key thinkers. So intersectionality, when we talk about, it is something that is interconnected nature of race, gender, class, caste, etc. We understood. It is also talking about something called hegemony or authority in social order. This is with reference to Antonio Gramsci we talk, where power seems to be maintaining through consent of people, not just coercion or force. So when you when you have the mindset to force somebody and do something, that doesn't remain as power anymore, says Antonio Gramsci. So he says that power is something you can consistently maintain over anything or anybody only through their consent. If without that consent you can't do, that means you need something called social order in order to continue with your authority and hegemony. Right. So key feminist theories, a critical theorist in this matter is Maya Angelou, who writes, I know why the caged bird sings. So this work challenges racist and sexist narratives, like how social order is being maintained by the authority, what sort of force is being used, and all. Maya Angelou in detail discusses through her characters. And we see Paulo Freire coming up with the work Pedagogy of the Oppressed. That means how language, how critically consciousness is imposed and how people accept the oppression is what he talks about in his work, Paulo Freire. And we also see post-constructionist thinkers like Michael Foucault, Judith Butler, Jacques Derrida, Julia Kristeva talking about power and levels of, practicing power over different races, genders, and different classes and caste people in order to, maintain the hegemony is what they all come up with. Under feminist ideologies and key thinkers, we come up with these matters. Moving on to the movements of feminist movements in India, we see that key feminist actors and writers like Savitri Bai Phule, who lived between 1831 to 1897, becomes the pioneer of women's education, who opened many schools for female. She talks about the necessity for women to get educated and be able to become the uh, primary breadwinner of the family, or for that matter, stand on their own feet, become independent and individual, and be able to guide not only the family but also the society. So Savitri Bai Phule comes up with a great feminist ideologies along with great noble thoughts towards women and the welfare of the society, I can say. Similarly, we see Tarabai Shinde's Stree Purush Tulana, which is a work came in 1882. This is the first Indian feminist text, we can say. coming up with various perspectives on women and their oppression and their problems. And we also get to see Chipko movement that came into existence in 1970s, where women environmental activism and ecofeminism is discussed, like how women go and hug the trees, making sure that they are not chopped off. So this is a beautiful active movement that also is including the feminist intrusion into the discussion, feminism contribution to the discussion from the perspective of ecofeminism. How do you save the nature? How do you save the nature being a woman? Are the few things that you learn from this Chipko movement, which got established in 1970, which continues. Now, the 1974 report on the status of women in India, which is led by Veena Mazumdar and Lokita Sarkar, highlights gender inequalities in education, legal rights, and economic participation. Right? So these are a few feminist moments in India. We can really look at through a bird eye view, and we can read them in detail also in the textbook. Prominent Indian feminist writers, when you look at Neera Ewell Davis, who is a sociologist, feminist, activist, coming up with a few works we can mention here is Gender and Nation, published in 1997, Bordering, published in 2019. And we also see Manjula Padmanabhan, the cartoonist and playwright who writes her play Harvest in 1997. Organ trade and globalization are the major discussions here in her work. And we also see Meena Kandaswamy. So Meena Kandaswamy, who's a poet, novelist, activist, who writes the works like poetry like Touch in 2006, Miss Militancy in 2010, who retells the Tamil Nadu or Hindu myths from a feminist and anti-caste perspective. So Meena Kandaswamy is one of those prominent writers, poet, novelist, and activist. And her one of the novels is The Gypsy Goddess, which was written in 2014, and When I Hit You came in 2018. These are Indian prominent writers, feminist writers. You can read in the textbook in detail while understanding the bird eye view point of view, all these people. Now, we also see migration and transactional feminist poetics, where feminist poetical geography comes into picture, which examines nation, citizenship, migration, and gender. We also see Chandra Talpade Mohanty's Under Westernized Revisited, 2003, Global Feminist Solidarity. And then we see diaspora writers and their identity, like Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni, Bharati Mukherjee, Jhumpa Lahiri. These people write about displacement, hybridity, identity, and many other, points like alienation, so on and so forth. So these are the migration and transactional feminist poetics, I mean politics, which you can go through the works of these particular writers. Let's move on to Unit 10. Unit 10 here talks about introduction to gender and sexuality. So when we are talking about gender and sexuality, um, we see that feminism has evolved into feminisms. It is no more one feminism, but you have multiple feminisms. So you have liberal feminism, radical feminism, and then you have various other types of feminisms, right? Marxist feminism, socialist feminism. For that matter, you can talk about Dalit feminism. So various types of feminisms have come, by looking at intricate details of each types of oppression that every woman undergoes or every woman goes through. So this emphasizes on the intersectionality and challenging systems that perpetuate inequality in the society. So gender is basically something you name as social construct, which is influenced by psychosocial. Psycho, which is psychological, then you have social, cultural, political, and sexual factors, right? So Judith Butler argues that both gender and sex are socially constructed, and gender is performative. Gender is not something you can decide by the birth. If a woman is taking care of, most of the things that are dealt by men, you might not call her as men, but gender works are for performative. How you perform is what makes you a particular gender. I can say that gender roles are assigned based on societal expectation, while sex is considered as biological distinction. So if you are a male physically, but you are taking care of majority of the works of domesticity, that is not a wrong thing. You need not decide that being a male you should not do certain works, or if you're a female you need not decide that you should be only at home and take care of domesticity and you can't deal with the provisions. So you can be a provider, a breadwinner in spite of being a female. You can be a caregiver and a protector being a male. There is no problem in that. But gender roles are usually assigned by the societal expectations, while sex is considered as biological distinction. So writers and their works. You can see Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie comes up with this "We Should All Be Feminists" in 2014, who discusses the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes. You can also see Judith Butler coming up with Gender Trouble, which is written in 1990. She introduces the concept of gender performity and critiques normative gender roles. You also see Karla Bhasin, who writes The Understanding of Gender in 2003. She explores the distinction between sex, which is biological, and gender, which is social. Right? So these things you can go through to understand what exactly the differences between gender and sexuality. We also move ahead to understand identity and representation in writings on genders and sexuality. So, identity formation is influenced by race, class, caste, ethnicity, gender, and location. By now, we understood that. And representational literature often reflects societal stereotypes and dominant and cultural forms. So, Nivedita Menon highlights the intersection of caste, sexuality, and gender in India. We also see that uh, writers and their works related to just identity and representation writings in gender and sexuality are Ruth Vanita and Salim Kidwai, who comes up with the work Same Sex Love in India, which is a reading from literature and history, which was published in 2000, a compilation of marginalized voices on alternate sexualities in India. Virginia Woolf also comes up with Arnaldo, a biography which was written in 1928. This explores gender fluidity and the transformation of a man into a woman across centuries. So we also try to understand queer theories here. LGBTQIA plus. This is a particular community that faces challenges in expressing gender identity and sexuality due to historical ostracization. Why are they ostracized? If you ask me, people do not believe in having different genders other than male and female. Therefore, there is a need to look at the gender fluidity and non-binary identities. So they challenge the traditional male-female binary. So transgenders and individuals often face violence. They face discrimination. They face social stigma. They don't. Their own families do not like them to be involved into the families. They do not like them to remain in the families as family members. We get to see all these things. That's why some of the writers came up with works. Living Smile Vidya. I am Vidya, 2007. It's an autobiography of a Dalit trans woman exploring caste, class, and gender struggles. A. Revati. She comes up with the truth about me, a Hijra life story. It is in 2010. It is an autobiography detailing of the life of a transgender woman in India. Nam Joshi writes The Fabulous Feminist in 2012, which explores lesbianism and female empowerment. And P. Rajarao, the boyfriend, Rajarao's the work, the boyfriend came in 2003, one of the first gay novels published in India. So we see cultural depictions of sexuality here. So we realize that sexuality has evolved from a religious concept to a medical and social construct. Now, gender nonconformity is often viewed as a threat to established societal norms. So, the Indian mythology and literature have historically recognized non-binary and queer identities as well. So, you see, Deepa Mehta came up with a movie and novel Fire in 1996, the first Bollywood movie which depicts explicit lesbian scenes sparking discussions on homosexuality in India. Even we see Volga, the liberation of Sita, Olga's right of the liberation of Sita, which came in 2015, which is a Sahitya Academy Award winner work, a retelling of Ramayana from the perspective of marginalized female characters to look at the social construct of different genders. We also see Sujoy Josh work Ahalya in 2015. It's a short film that reverse the traditional narrative of infidelity, placing the blame on men instead of women. So these are a few cultural depiction of sexuality. And we also see, finally, we are coming to the end of the session. So we see popular literary texts on sexuality and key concepts. Writers like Kamala Das, Ismat Chugtai, challenging the societal norms and gender and sexuality. Their works explore themes like female desire, lesbianism, and the subversion of patriarchal structures. We also see writers and works such as Kamala Das's Entikatha, My Story, Entekatha, which means my story, published in 1973. It is an autobiography discussing her sexuality, her marital affairs, and her homosexual desires. We also see Alphabet of Lust. In 1977, it got published, explores the theme of female desire and sexual liberation. Summer in Calcutta, 1965. It's a collection of poems that challenges traditional gender roles. We also see Ismat Chuktai's Liha. Okay, the quilt. Okay, that means the quilts that you uh, something that you try to sleep with. So it is 1942. It's a fabric that you try to cover you with when you sleep. So it is 1942 published thing. It's a short story exploring female homosexuality and sexual desire. And you also see Teddy Lakir, Crooked Line, 1944, a novel that defines societal norms and stereotypes about women. Yahan Se Wahan Tak, 1981, an autobiography discussing her feminist and literary journey, which is another work. So we are at the end to understand this queer theory in activism. Queer theory challenges the idea of fixed identity, classifications, and questions the privileging of heterosexuality. We also see the theory emerged in the 1990s, influenced by feminism, post-structuralism, and post-colonialism. Queer activism in India has gained momentum with pride marks and increased visibility for LGBTQIA plus rights. And writers and works are Hoshang Merchant, Forbidden Sex, Forbidden Texts, New India's Gay Poets 2008, which discusses the plurality of homosexuality and societal pressures faced by gay individuals in India. Similarly, we see Firdaus Kanga trying to grow, published in 1990, a novel exploring the life of a gay man with disabilities in India. Similarly, we see Shyam Selvadurai coming up with the work Funny Boy, 1994 work, a novel about a young boy's coming of age. What is coming of age? Somebody coming to the particular hitting puberty, I can say, an exploration of his homosexuality in Sri Lanka, right? So finally, the conclusion and future directions for this particular concepts of this particular unit are going to be this way. So despite the legal advancements like the discriminalization of Section 377, LGBTQIA plus individuals in India still face societal stigma and discrimination. So literature and activism continue to play a crucial role in challenging societal norms and advocating for equality. We see the future of gender and sexuality studies lies in intersectional approaches that consider caste, class, and other societal factors. So writers and their works, if we have to look at Ruth Vanita's Love's Right, Same-Sex Marriage in India and the West, 2005 published, explores the history and cultural significance of same-sex marriages in India. Similarly, we see Gender, Sex, and the City, Urdu Rekhti poetry, right, which is between 7080 to 8070. I mean, 1780 1870. You see, it is published in 2012. It challenges the notion of homosexuality being a Western import, not as the indigenous import. So these LGBTQIA existed everywhere, in every country, in every region, but we need not say it is a Western import. It can be the native thing also in every community. So we should accept it, and to understand this more, we have to read these works, and we have to explore these key themes, and we have to understand these theories. So this is the end of your particular Unit 10, Introduction to Gender and Sexuality. Just to go through all these things, one last minute, we will see what exactly have we gone through in Block 3. Introduction to Critical Categories, Introduction to Caste, Race and Ethnicity. We saw Introduction to Feminist Geography, and we also looked at Introduction to Gender and Sexuality. So here I would like to end this session because we have done an intensive and extensive study of Block 3 with all the necessary uh, key concepts and writers and their works and the explanation to each of these works. Now we will move on to Block 4 and Block 5 in the upcoming sessions, which will be again be conducted on 15th of this month and 16th of this month. 15th will be a Saturday and 16th will be a Sunday. So I hope you all had good time. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone.